It is Sunday, the 21st of December, 2 days prior to Joseph Smith's birthday, which have some interesting announcements about that coming up later this week. I'm very excited to be here with you. It is Sunday at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. That means it's time for these Korah whores to go to church. You godless horde, get to church. We're going to start a little bit differently today. Let it not be said that the Korah whores don't grow and develop and become better at things. Do you remember this?
What were you saying? Thanks, Tucker. And by the way, if folks want to help us out, jdvance.com. Every little bit helps if you can throw us a couple bucks. But look, what I was basically saying is that we're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future.
So I would be loath to trigger everybody first thing in the morning on a Sunday. Good day. Hello. Are you having a pleasant Sunday? How's your day of repose, rest, and or hangover? Hi, we're the Church of Korah. We're a church for godless people. I do not endorse any political candidate on my platform. I don't endorse any political candidates at all. This guy, J.D. Vance, least of all, but nor am I specifically endorsing anybody else. Apparently, this week, Talking Points USA, also known as Charlie Kirk's widow and supposed throng, have endorsed J.D. Vance to replace Donald Trump in 2028. I'll say this much: looking forward very much to how Donald Trump feels about being replaced. It's going to be an interesting time. 2026 is going to get interesting. But of course, this is one of the more loathsome things that J.D. Vance has ever said. Now, everybody has their political agendas. I'm not telling people how they should vote or not vote, who they should support or shouldn't support. And frankly, certainly not in the case of a man who apparently is being endorsed by Talking Points USA to be the next Republican president, when most Republicans I know don't even think he's Republican. But to say the least, I think that the sentiment that J.D. Vance is espousing or expressing in this message is the feeling of a lot of conservative people right now. And it's at the heart of what I want to speak to today, which is estrangement and or no contact, especially among religious households and their children who leave church. Leave the church, leave their church, leave every church, what have you. As a church for atheists, mainly made up of ex-Christians, ex-Mormons, and so forth, well, we're going to be dealing with this quite a bit. Let's go on. I want to show you a little bit more.
Of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it? I just wanted to ask that question and propose that maybe if we want a healthy ruling class in this country, we should invest more, we should vote more, we should support more people who actually have kids, because those are the people who ultimately have a more direct stake in the future of this country.
I just want to point out something, and maybe he misspoke, doubtful. Did you hear J.D. Vance there say, if we want a healthy ruling class? No. I wish no harm or violence on anyone, but no, let the ruling class fend for themselves. Everybody else has to. I mean, isn't that the idea? Or is it just the people who work for a living who have to fend for ourselves? Hello, Tech D. Welcome to our Godless sermon. I'm actually getting going on it. Good. How are you? Let's everybody welcome new people into congregation today. This is our Godless congregation. It's just like normal church, but with more swearing. And we talk about we talk all kinds of dirty things. We're good Korah whores. We just like that. But here's the thing that JD Vance is talking about that I think addresses thank you, that addresses the crisis that a lot of ex-Mormons, ex-Christians, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses are experiencing right now as families start to fall apart in America, and as along the lines of our not only political divisions. It's easy to see political divisions sometimes, but a lot harder to see that there's to discern, is there a social division? Is there a moral division? Do we no longer share the same values that we did when we were fill in the blank, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Baptist versus, everybody else, Mormon versus everybody else, and so is it because we have different perspectives of the future? Is it because we have different ideas about who we as a country, as a people, should invest in? And this idea that we are investing into the future of people who have children versus not investing into the future of people who choose to be childless by choice is a pretty key difference, I would say, between different sides of a social and moral divide, leaving the politics out of it because I am not here to tell you how to vote. But let's move on, because this is going to get very heated as we get closer to this subject of what happens when we, the deconstructing or deconstructed, choose to distance ourselves from parents. That's a good thing, actually. Jex, welcome. Thank you.
Man, if you had called for, I don't know, lowering tax rates to zero or invading...
I've had enough of this guy. Let's
First
go
is because
on.
it actually hit a nerve. I mean, these people recognize that they're unhappy. They live in one-bedroom apartments in New York City. They've played their entire lives to win a status game. They're obsessed with their jobs. They're obsessed with their wealth and with their fortunes. And they look at middle America, people who are actually pretty happy with their lives and the choices that they've made.
Okay. I will say this from a moral standpoint. It is quite a thing for a man who has had rich people handing him every advantage in life to pretend, as he claims in his now debunked novel, fantasy novel, Hillbilly Elegy, to pretend that he is Mr. Appalachia, that he is the salt of the earth Christian man from Christian America, living out this life for Jesus, calling out his own wife, who is not Christian, from a stage with his Christian friend, associate Erica Kirk, trying to gather and garner political support from people who are Christian. And while people who ask, aren't you some kind of Wall Street guy? Aren't you Peter Thiel's tool? Aren't you working for wealthy billionaires who are notorious for abusing Christians and abusing believers and using their ideals and their values against them? Do I have to remind anybody that this Hallow app, where you can pray to God for a certain fee every month, actually is now owned majority by Peter Thiel? Apparently nobody realizes there that that there at least are some people in the world, apparently some of them Catholic, Hello, as I understand it, is basically an app for Catholics to pray to God, have seemed to have forgotten that you can do that for free, apparently. I'd always thought so, but yeah, anyways. Yeah, that did happen. You aren't wrong. You aren't wrong. In any event, then for him to go out and shame people who are childless by choice, many of them, I'm not among them, but many of them because they can't afford it in America today. It's not affordable. And we've had moments where we could have chosen to make it affordable. And we still could choose to do that. We just don't. And to espouse and defend the values of a billionaire class, a ruling class, Mr. Vance, when you see this, which you won't, to advance the agenda of a ruling class in making life unaffordable for raising a family in America, and then blame people who are childless by choice for being broke, and then and choosing to put their career, not only put a career first, but frankly choosing to survive in an America where it takes 3 incomes to make ends meet, and then to shame people as greedy for choosing to put their survival out there on the line. Sure, there are differences. There are people, I'm sure JD Vance knows a lot of people on Wall Street and coastal elites, so-called, who choose to put their careers ahead so that they could make more money and live lavish and have a great life. But is that the status of people who live in flyover country? I assure you it is not. As somebody who's lived in flyover country his whole life, blue, red stater all my life, I can assure you that's not the story of most people. So JD Vance, may he live long and healthy and happy. May no violence or harm come upon him. I wish no harm to anyone. But frankly, may he fuck off when it comes to moral issues. I want to move on and talk about somebody who maybe this will trigger a few more people, but I'm in the business of triggering people. That's the kind of preaching I do.
They hate normal Americans, not force your misery on the rest of the country.
And it's quite obvious. It's like at 19, it's all career.
In case you don't recognize that voice and aren't looking at the screen, you're looking at Jordan B. Peterson. I promise we'll be as brief with this as possible.
30, that's just not the case. It's not the case. I don't know if I've seen a single.
It suggests that they know.
Blah blah. Shush.
I've been working with men and women my entire life, and I've watched this, and it's quite obvious. It's like at 19, it's all career. By 30, that's just not the case. It's not the case. I don't know if I've seen a single woman who I didn't think had a psychological problem, who hadn't seriously flipped in their attitude towards the balance of family and career by the time they were 30. And then you see lots of women who at 40 haven't had kids and perhaps wanted to, and that's not a pleasant situation. I was talking to a woman who is about 39, a professional woman, attractive, well put together, competent, well educated, successful in her profession, unmarried, in a relationship with an older guy, but unmarried, and desperate to have a child. She said no one ever talked to her about the fact that she'd actually want to have a family or encouraged her to think about doing that. It was as if it wasn't within the realm of possibility that one of the things that she might have the ambition to do would be to be a mother.
So I just want to be fair to Jordan Peterson. Fairness is part of my value system. He does address in part of this that I clipped out that he's trying to address that work is a thing that you don't want to do, but people pay you because they don't want to do it. And I think that's a flaw in his thinking, though it's not generally untrue. For most people, work is something you wouldn't do if it didn't pay. And then the things that are truly valuable in life to you generally are things that you either don't get paid to do, or even more so that you pay to do, right? You pay to go to amusement parks. You pay to go on vacation and travel. You pay to buy more homes or bigger homes or to invest in, what have you, right? These are the things that you value, are the things you put money to, or that you do, and even if it doesn't make money because you want to contribute that in some way. And he's making the case that parenting should be one of those things, and choosing, particularly for women, to choose to be a mother is one of those things. And so it's a thing that maybe we should go back to the old conservative traditional family value that says, let us remember that for women, their preference would be to become mothers and raise children and have families if they sat down and thought about it when they were 19, but they don't, because his argument, the left has crept into the academic system, whatever. I'm done putting his foul attitude in my mouth. So what I'm saying is this. Perhaps he's right. I don't think so. But morally speaking, to shame somebody for being childless by choice when they are young, because it is of low value. Oftentimes, Jordan Peterson, I have heard him, I didn't clip it out here, but I've heard him talk about what's being ignored by women when they make that choice when they are young and at their most fertile, is that they don't realize that when you are older, you'll be lonely. And that's absolutely key to talking about that value, that difference, that generational difference of values between Jordan Peterson's values. Jordan Peterson's only some 20 years older than me. This mainline Gen X or older baby boomers values versus the zillennials, millennial values, much less the Gen Z and younger, is this idea that your life has to be survivable. You have to survive in the reality of the economics of the day. And you have to balance the things that are valuable to you against a question of, is life worth living? Is this what you would choose? And when someone says, well, you have to make a choice for what you're going to do when you're old, for how you are going, what you're going to be surrounded with when you're old, neglects, first of all, the question of whether or not you will get old, because a fair number of men, I hopefully don't have to show you the statistics. I don't want to bring you down. A fair number of men in this country particularly don't survive 50. Okay, you think women live generally longer than men? Then those numbers are skewed by the fact of how many men die of heart disease, how many men die of stress-related illnesses, and frankly, diseases of despair. Not to say that those only affect men. Certainly, they affect everybody. And when men die, it affects us. It affects everybody around them, right? It's easy to say, well, if I die, everybody will move on. But that's generally not true. Joe, later, here, listen to your own sermon, guy. Okay, good. Let's move on to talking about, okay, what does that have to do with estrangement? So you see that there's this difference in values about, and mostly they're about investing in the future, which sounds like a good thing, in spite of the fact that we could invest in the future by making America more affordable. But let us not speak on this. That will prove political very shortly. Let's skip ahead. We're going to skip Dr. Phil altogether, which is always good advice. I want to just quickly, in fact, let's quickly look at this. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead all the way to this. If it's not clear to you, this may be a trend that you have noticed or seen before. Estranged parents is the other side of what we non-religious or no longer religious, ex-Mormon, ex-Christian, ex-Jehovah's Witness, etc., what we would call no contact. We go no contact with them, or they go no contact with us, usually with our parents, though oftentimes with siblings, with spouses, and sometimes even with children, especially for those people who deconstruct later in life. Most people I know who deconstruct don't wind up cutting off their kids just because they're in a different place in life and have different values. Not all of us who leave religion have all the same values. Usually we have a high standard of honesty, a high standard of justice. And so those are things that we usually share. But that doesn't mean that there aren't Republicans and conservatives and social conservatives, pro-lifers and so forth in the ex-Mormon camp, in the ex-Christian camp. They are here and they should be welcome here. And they should bring their values with them. And we should celebrate people having values. But we need to at least integrate some new values. And that's what I want to talk about today. If you don't know, so the woman you're looking at here on the screen is Diane Cohn. She started a channel a couple of years ago. I think it was like some 4 years ago, actually. No, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. That blew up, got really big, She's getting millions of views. And then she started selling parents of kids who go no contact a program where you can pay her some amount of money. I want to say like $20, $25 a month or something, to basically join her little bitch fest, to go and talk about how my kids don't care that they hurt me. They don't care what happens to me. I say bitch fest. I should be more generous with it. They complain. And let's be fair. Again, I'm high on fairness, especially in the ex-Mormon world. A lot of our group therapy, a lot of our sitting down and having conversations are just as much bitch fest as this. So we'll sit here and we will talk and we will vent about my dad this, my mom that, my siblings this. And I'm not saying that people don't need to get that out. They do need to get that out. We all need to be able to get that out. But the science of getting it out, it's not like letting pressure out of a balloon, right? You let it out, especially in a contained area with other people who have that same pressure. And what ends up happening is we become an echo chamber. That's the science of, if you will, of venting about, the difference in values with our families that we came from, is that we start reinforcing these ideas that, and especially where everybody says the same thing, you start echoing back to each other. Well, it's a good thing we all went no contact. Everybody should go no contact, but that leaves a lot of people feeling on the outs who want to deconstruct religion, want to, at the same time as maintaining a healthy relationship with their parents, and no values are going to come out of everybody deciding, well, this is what happens. You leave the church, then you get your Sundays back, and you sleep in on Sundays or take up golf. Then you start saving your tithing money or investing it differently, or blowing it away on fun. Then you and your kids have more fun because you don't have to go to church and you can do awesome things. You pick up a good drinking habit, that definitely got to do. And then you go out and get start experimenting with swinging or, polyamory or something, discover what you do or don't like about that. Then you get divorced. And there's this playbook that a lot of people who deconstruct religion are going to look at and say, cool, hot, like it, don't like it. But here in these other ones in between, don't like it. I don't want it. Don't want to pick up the drinking habit. But I can tell you this, I love me some booze. But I am so grateful every day that when I sit down and think, do I have a drinking habit? And it causes me this Mormon panic that says, Joe, do you have a drinking problem? Well, maybe I do. Maybe I have a problem. That's like the worst thing. It was the number one thing my father, in my excommunication trial, my father was there when I was kicked out of the Mormon church. And he said, the one thing I wish Joe wouldn't do was drink. And I thought, shit, did I validate Dad's worst fear of what would happen to me when I left the church? And at that point, I've been drinking for a while. And I'll think like, when was the last time I had a drink? And when I realize I don't remember which day, what date, which week, or which month it was when I last had a drink, I realized I probably don't have a drinking problem. Doesn't mean you don't. But if you don't drink all the time because you can get along in life and just function without alcohol, chances are you're probably okay. So I feel good about that. But again, it's this thing. It's like I can opt out of that while recognizing for somebody else's deconstruction experience, it's a key component. So that they're going to go out there and they don't need an echo chamber that says, everybody, we're all going to go out. We're going to do our ex-Mormon thing and we're going to get smashed. We're all going to get hammered. Everybody's going to party and then we're all going to hook up with each other's wives. Yeah, here we go. Everybody wants to, what's that? What's that? Who's hooking up with my wife? Am I hooking? Whose wife? What's this? It's not everybody's values. And we need a broad diversity of experience for people who are deconstructing religion. And going no contact has to be a part of that. That being said, before I go on to this next part, in fact, we're going to skip Diane because frankly, she's triggering and I want to get to the good stuff. suffice it to say, I watched this woman. Let me just minimize me and so you can see this person. Okay. This is one of her more famous videos. I watched this woman's videos, and it's easy for me to see a narcissist. Now, this is part of the problem. This is where I am part of the problem. Okay. Is I look at this and I see this is a narcissistic mom, seen it a million times, supporting my congregation, supporting my friends, supporting my loved ones in deconstructing from Mormonism, particularly. We see the narcissistic mom over and over again. Part of the reason why it's important to recognize that while being careful with the word narcissist or words like codependent is that once again, it becomes easy to get into a box where it's like, I am in this box and not in this box, especially when we start pondering our abuse. Important to acknowledge that we have been abused. If you have been abused, and not to acknowledge it and put yourself in the box if you have not been abused. But at the same time, when we see abused and abusive as separate boxes, it becomes easy for anyone to say, no, I'm in this box. That means I can't be in this box. And that's just not the case. I think the data is held out, shows again and again, hurt people. And abused people oftentimes can be abusive. And when we use these words, which are accurate, real, worthy of attention, like narcissist, psychopath, codependent, etc. While we may be talking about something that's important, it also becomes easy to stigmatize and forget the humanity. And I'm going to speak now to the morality of it. As we get going in this Godless sermon, I want to speak to this fact, okay? I am not a therapist. And only a therapist can tell you what kind of therapy will help you. I'm not here to speak to what therapy will help you, if therapy will help you, but I do believe that therapy can help people. And if that is something that you want to explore, that you feel you need to explore, I would encourage you to do that with somebody who is qualified and has the credentials to do it. That's the difference between our Godless church and those other churches who are about God, is that oftentimes those churches are going to tell you you need to talk to the pastor. Do not talk to our pastor about your emotional and mental development unless it is to ask a moral question. And the moral question that I want to speak to is, should you do it? Should we attempt to heal this divide, this generational divide between religious families and people in the family who deconstruct as they grow older? And the answer is not a flat, straight up yes or no, as is often the case here with what we preach at the Church of Korihor. But I want to respect the fact that the answer is yes in a lot of cases and no in others. There are people who absolutely should go no contact. And there are people who, if they decide not to go no contact, not only should we respect it, but we should be encouraging and we should be welcoming and we should give them more feedback beyond just, oh, I left my parents, I just stopped talking to mine. That's lovely. A choice for you, probably the right choice. In most cases I have seen where people choose to go no contact with family, it's the right choice for them. It seems to me, morally, it's the right choice. Unfortunately, it also becomes a place where we as a community grow stagnant. And now we are left with a void in our value structure that says, do I owe it to my parents? Do I owe it to my kids? Do I owe it to my siblings? Do I owe it to the community? Do I owe it to myself to try and say, I was no contact, I needed that at the time, I want to grow back into a place where we have a relationship. And that is what I want to speak to today, and how we can do that better. And this is Godless sermon number 37, Estranger Things. And I want you to remember as we get going in our opening hymn, and then we'll continue. You can always learn more about our Godless Church at korihor.org. That's KORIHOR.org. Let us remember now. Let us have an opening hymn, and let us remember the wisdom of Korihor, that a child is not guilty.
Child is not guilty for laughing too loud, making mistakes, or chasing a cloud. Let children speak. Listen, you will find their laughter wonder, potential undefined. Let them run, let them laugh and grow. Sing the song that only their hearts know. A child is not guilty, born to be free. Don't blame them because of you or me. Let them dance, let them shout, they illuminate the way. A child is not guilty, give them room to play. Korihor's wisdom, we're born of the sky. The children in us look up to ask why. Remember innocence, you will see their joyful voices echo in you and me. Let them run wild like the river's course, free of gods, of sin, of our remorse. A child is not guilty, born to be free. Don't blame them because of you or me. Let them dance, let them shout, they illuminate the way. A child is not guilty, give them room to play. We are all born immature, float in each other's minds. We all judge and are judged, all of our childish lives. Let this voice speak, all judgments melt. The wondrous child within yourself. A child is not guilty, born to be free. Don't blame them because of you or me. Let them dance, let them shout, they illuminate the way. A child is not guilty, give them room to play.
This is, again, Godless sermon number 37. Here we go. Godless sermon number 37, Estranger Things. And welcome to our sermon. So I just want to say, listen, toxic family, no contact, parental estrangement. These are all buzzwords that will bring up a lot of pain and a lot of trauma. So we want to make space for this and delve into it. We can talk about these things. Probably good to talk about them with a therapist, and this is no replacement for that. Nowhere is it more the case that estrangement, no contact, or however you want to talk about it, from whichever perspective you want to talk about it, is a high priority to consider and to talk about. Why it is that for some people, you may have to go no contact with your family for the rest of your life, and even choose to cut off contact from them. But then how to square that with a value that says, I can't believe so and so left the church. They're in our community, we love them, we care about them, and their parents cut them off entirely. Well, that's just cruel. So we can do it to them, but they can't do it to us. Where is the fairness? And so I would say, let's talk about it just a little bit. We can open it up, and we can nurture these wounds. And I would invite you now, take a brief moment. In fact, let's overview a little bit here. I want you to take a brief moment and just inhale deeply through your nose right now, if you will. If you'll indulge me. And then exhale even slower than you inhaled. You keep going and focus on your breath, just to focus your mind on a very mundane thing. No other reason. You don't have to do it this way every time. What matters here is take a moment to let all those thoughts that are normally percolating in your head and troubling you, all the triggers that come up for you, just let them go by. Let's take a moment, take a break from it. I have to go pick up this, I have to go do that. Let it go. Let it come up, feel it, because thoughts are feelings and feelings are thoughts. Bring it up, feel it, let it go by. And I want you to just for a moment, just consider for a moment the value of triggers. Triggers result from your nervous system reacting to danger. Some triggers are going to come up. They're going to present with feelings that you can feel in your body. Let them come up, feel them in your body. See, know, contemplate where in your body, what the feeling of it is, what the weight of it is, what the temperature of it is. Maybe for people like me, there's a color with it. And when it comes up and it says, I'm a trigger, and there is something in it that is abusive, where you were abused, let it come up and live in that anxiety for just one moment. Let it come up. Acknowledge it. Don't fight it. And let it go. You don't have to pretend you don't care. You care. That's why you felt it. But you don't have to go from this moment to the next moment with it. You can go into the next moment and let it stay in the past. You can go into the next moment without it. I want you to also look around in this space and think for a moment about guilt. And see if something comes up for you. Feeling guilty. The natural urge to respond to guilt is to defend yourself. Again, just like it is for fear, like it is for anxiety. Let that guilt come up. Let your defense mechanism come up to meet it. And then let the defense mechanism fade off into the past. If the guilt remains with you, let it remain with you. But remember, you are moving forward in time. And feelings don't have to. Triggers don't have to. This is what it means to live in the anxiety. Just let it be what it is, because you can't live your life running from anxiety. You can't live your life running away from it, trying to avoid it. It's a good way to end up in some bad habits, whether it's drinking, or whether it is eating too much sugar, eating too much carbohydrates, the comfort foods, or whether it's exercising more than is appropriate, whether it is chasing toxic relationships, whatever it may be that you try to chase away those feelings. If we can't live in the anxiety and acknowledge that to be alive is to suffer, is to experience these things and appreciate the value and even the richness of feeling pain, and just let those things come up. Let them come up now. Whatever it is, acknowledge it. Say, oh, I feel it. Think to yourself, I feel that. And then let it go on the path that it's going while you go on the path that you're going. Triggers tend to dominate our lives, especially those of us who have left high demand religions like Mormonism, like Jehovah's Witnesses, and like Scientology, all of which are religious paradigms that are now, as organizations, falling apart in terms of membership, in terms of attendance. I've been watching a lot of Mormon content lately. I do that. It's one of my bad habits. But I also need to stay on top of things a little bit. And a lot of content right now in the Mormon space is all about how Exmos keep saying that our people have all gone inactive and everybody's leaving the church. And it's not true. Just look at this Pew poll statistic. They don't ever talk about the methodology of collecting data. They don't really care. Most people don't. But never mind that at all. The very fact that somebody's addressing it and saying, we're not losing members, don't let anybody tell you that we're bleeding membership, tells you right now, oh, there's something, there's a problem. If you're having to talk about it, then there's a problem. But then, of course, if you address the problem, for most people, running away from their anxiety, whatever that may be, or for whatever reason, to run away from it means to defend it against it. Get up your defense mechanism against it. And a lot of Mormons right now, I can tell you, are feeling it, are feeling this. How do we exist in a new paradigm where so many members of our families are leaving the church? And here we are, especially for content creators, that they say, here I am, I've basically committed by virtue of the fact that I'm making content, promoting the church, protecting the church, serving the faith, that I am now obligated to stay and to not join them in leaving the church. I'm obligated to do it anyways, because I'm invested in it. Whether they think that consciously or not, that I would assume that has to be part of the paradigm for them. And in the process of that, what you end up with is a lot of content coming out of Ward Radio, A Thoughtful Faith. And again, I'm sorry for those of you who have never been Mormon. This is all very Mormon specific, but again, that's the content that I consume. But there is, I'm sure there's similar in the Jehovah's Witness space. We are seeing the moment of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and I am 100% here for it, with lots of heart, going out to those people who are leaving the witnesses in this very trying and difficult time, as all of the demons of the Watchtower organization are starting to come out. To hear these people's stories, the abuse, the hurt, the systematized hurt caused by the Jehovah's Witnesses to their people. And these people now are beginning en masse, or in some cases, they have been living without community, in some cases, many cases, without spiritual development, without spiritual community, and probably with the same adversity to spirituality as a word that I have had most of my ex-Mormon experience. acknowledge that. We got to let them have that space. For me, it was the better part of a decade. I didn't want anything to do with church. I didn't want anything to do with spirituality. I didn't want anything to do with the very word brought up just ideas about God, commandments, and this false paradigm, and it is a false paradigm of being worthy and righteous because your performative behaviors qualified you for the conditional love of an unconditional God. And that, there's, for most of us, that could be a journey where you spend your whole life never seeking to change who you are, choosing to just learn to strive to accept yourself as you are. Because a lot of people who come out of church, there's a lot of acceptance. That's a journey there. There's a time period where you have to accept. That's this angry phase. And the people still in the church, they call it the angry phase. We call it the angry phase. I put to you, it is more than anger. It is relearning to look at ourselves as somebody who has a right to exist as we are. That's why a lot of people, people say that, oh, you leave the church. Notice how many people who become trans when they leave the church. It's not until they left the church, now all of a sudden they're trans. And of course, they want to establish the causal relationship there to say, well, leaving the church obviously turns you trans. Yeah, okay. Or you are trans and the church suppressed it. No, that can't be the case. Well, you're still in that paradigm. You're still inside that system, so you're not going to see it. Same thing with people who come out of the closet as gay. Same thing with people who want to deconstruct white supremacy and the inherent white supremacy that exists inside Christian nationalism. And so they have to have this time period. A lot of people I talk to in the evangelical community, especially, we don't see as much of this in the Mormon, ex-Mormon paradigm, but it does exist. I have met people in the Mormon, ex-Mormon paradigm. But in the evangelical community, you find there are a lot of people who are Black who need to say, I'm proud to be Black. I'm not going to be ashamed to be Black. And if my mannerisms look or sound too Black for church, maybe the church was suppressing my identity, suppressing who I am. And so this is a time period. The angry phase is often a stage where the inner child that was left behind, that was stuffed down, that was suppressed and repressed, is going to emerge with a vengeance and say, I exist, damn it. And that has to happen, I think. And again, I am not a counselor. I'm just somebody who has done a lot of reading and supporting people on this subject. And I see it again and again. I welcome any therapists out there to echo in for or against what I'm saying here. That angry phase has to happen. It doesn't always have to look angry, but it has to have something to do with that inner child or that true self emerging beyond the organization, beyond the scripture, beyond the commandments, and beyond the gods, pretended as they are, beyond these things, and saying, I exist, I am real, and I have a right to exist. I have a right to exist as I am and as I choose to be. Then as we move into, I choose to be, I choose my life. That's where we come back to this idea. And the reason why I didn't spend a lot of time, really, I didn't spend any time going over clips of these people who make parental estrangement videos, parental estrangement seminars and books. Oh my gosh, the books. They write books about my kid left and won't talk to me. It's a whole ecosystem. It's a whole economy now of parents of children who deconstruct religion. They don't usually put that on the face. They usually put something political on the face when they're trying to draw people in, because religion is more difficult to talk about, where in this space of people who deconstruct, a lot of them are very political. And it's easier for them to broach the subject of, oh, my kid left me just because I support. In the case of Diane Cohn, she put in her video, oh, my daughter mainly wrote this letter about how I'm putting her voice. I'm just doing it. I'm just living in it. I don't like this person. I'm just going to let that be the thing. So I'm being judgmental, Diane Cohn, when you see this, and you won't. But she says, my daughter said she would want to go no contact with us. And I thought she meant this with her father, because she wouldn't have anything to do in 2020. She didn't want anything to do with that man, obviously referring to Donald Trump. And she, though, I mean, she didn't say that explicitly, but it was clear. It was bald faced. And it's like, okay, your daughter didn't want to have any wanted no contact with you because of your political support of Donald Trump. I mean, fair. That's a good enough reason. But because, again, triggers, when we can't handle them, and sometimes until we have tools provided through therapy, through support, through skill sets that don't happen naturally, that you have to learn. And you can go it alone, white knuckling it, and the light of reason help you if you choose to do that. Or you could get some coaching. You could get some therapy. Doesn't hurt. And frankly, oftentimes it can help. Therapy is not for everybody. Different kinds of therapy can help people. CBT helps people. EMDR helps people. Psychedelics help people. DBT helps people, but not all people. Make a good choice for you, and I am not qualified to advise you on what to do. Talk to a therapist. And be aware in yourself. What's true to you? What makes sense to you? And any good therapist, I think, in the conversations I've had with therapists, will tell you, yeah, that's key here, because not every therapist is meant for every person, right? You gotta invest time and money into finding therapy that works for you, if you choose to do that. And even if you don't choose to go the route of therapy, the choice to do something is going to come down to a question of, why should I? Is it a moral obligation? And if so, what is that moral obligation? Is it about fairness? Because if it's about fairness, we're going to have some problems. If it's about openness to new experiences, okay, that's good. And also it's going to be problematic. If it leads us to being dysfunctional, then it's not helping. And letting triggers dominate our lives becomes extremely dysfunctional. So there's really two ways of going about it, that I would argue, in trying to make a life worth living. There are really two ways of dealing with the triggers that come from having been raised in a family in a high demand religion. One path is to cut them off, no contact. And for somebody who can live the rest of their life with fewer triggers, and that opens up a space for them to live a life worth living, by simply saying, you are not my family anymore. That this was my family, you were my family of origin, as they call it, but you are not my chosen family. Now, this is a thing that I would say we inherit more from the queer community, and we are all benefited by it. This idea that really came out of, as far as I know, this idea of chosen family, it really came out of people coming out of the closet and saying, I won't be around people who don't accept me as gay, or I won't be around people who accept me I won't be around people who don't accept me as gay, or I won't be around people who don't accept me as queer. And if that's going to be you, you're out. And for a lot of people in the queer community, even if that leaves a hurt in them, a pain in them, that just gets guarded and held. The space that it opens up by just not being physically in the room, where everything reminds them of how family rejects them for who they are, becomes a very healthy thing. And then when that expands to not just looking for intimacy, for friendship, for support among people that you date, which can become a problem when it becomes too much about being gay or being queer. Means I'm out there looking for intimate partners who are going to now become my support group. Wait a minute. You're going to need more than that. Intimate partners are not enough for anybody. Everybody's going to have some community, even if you're not a social person because you're autistic or ADHD, because you're not very social. Even if it causes you social anxiety, you need community. You're going to need support. You need somebody to call when you can't make rent. You need somebody to call when you're feeling alone and just wish you had somebody just by your side just to rant to, or even just to talk to, send a text message to. You need somebody to call when you need to when you're looking for somebody to date who's not another toxic person from the apps, when you're looking for another job, when you're looking for a new apartment. These things can't be done just you by yourself and you with an intimate partner. It's just not practical. And so you need community. And lo and behold, what happens is that people become your surrogate mom, your surrogate dad, your surrogate brother, sister, sibling, non-binary, parent, non-binary. And suddenly they become as beloved to you as the people in the family you were born in. Another thing that happens often, especially in the ex-Mormon community that I see all the time, and I hope to bring some hope and some encouragement to some people who are in this no contact situation, is that a sibling will reach out to you or a sibling spouse. I won't out anybody here. I won't expose anybody. I'll say this in my family, in my extended family, I have been very encouraged to see how many people that I am either blood related to or not have reached out to me and said, don't ever tell so-and-so, but I'm with you. This is my experience too. And they have to live. A lot of people, when they're leaving Mormonism especially, a lot of people spend 5, 10, 15 years or more just going through the motions of going to church and reading the scriptures and doing the family home evenings and doing this and doing, even preaching, going on missions, and they don't believe anymore. And the sacrifice that they make is to live in the triggers all the time. All these doubts coming back again and again for them, and having to live in those doubts and live in those pains, live in those sufferings. We're seeing it now in Mormonism with polygamy. How many Mormons have wished for decades that they could call out that they hate polygamy, but in a church that now is actively excommunicating people for saying that in a public space. You talk shit about polygamy, you're talking shit about Brigham Young, you're talking shit about the prophets, you're out, and excommunicating them. And for people who are not like me, who didn't go spoiling for a fight with the church and found my excommunication court very healing, very encouraging. And I have told people many times, yes, I understand it is hurtful. And if it's hurtful for you, then I hate it for you. But it's not the case for all of us. For some of us to be excommunicated from the church, to have the church kick us out, is great closure. It was for me. It's, to this day, it is one of the proudest achievements of my life, is that I was kicked out of the Mormon church. Yes, I was, because I dared to speak truth to power. And that's part of my journey. It's not everybody's journey. And for a lot of people out there, especially women, especially I've seen it. I'm just calling out instances where I have specifically seen it. I'm not saying all women, I'm not saying all gay people, but a lot of gay people and a lot of trans people. They want to leave without conflict. They want to have a space where they can just be themselves, and they want to begin anew and build a future without the constraints of the triggers of being judged all the time for who they are and for what they feel. Yes, because feelings are valid and real. You don't have a thought that doesn't start at some point or end up at some point in your body, in your brain as a feeling. And so when people say, oh, you feel this, you feel that, whoa, slow down. Feelings are real. Feelings are valid. You don't have to marry a feeling. You don't have to be attached to it forever. But that doesn't mean you're going to get somewhere by saying, don't trust any of your feelings. Whew, you want to talk about a red flag? Here's a red flag. Anybody who would tell you you can never trust your feelings, that's a red flag. And it's a red flag we as atheists need to be mindful of, myself included. This is a moral thing that I have had to learn as an atheist and an ex-Mormon. And so as an ex-Christian, as a person who's deconstructed high demand religion, I have had to learn to recognize that intuition has its place, that it not only has its place, but anybody who would try to discourage you from your intuitions, you don't have to trust your intuition implicitly. You have to remember to use critical thinking. And critical thinking is not a natural skill. You must learn it. But if you only use critical thinking for everything, it doesn't give you much insight into who you are and why you choose to be alive. So let us decide. For some people, I would like to at least ask you, convince you to make room to say there are people for whom the healthiest thing is to just decide to go no contact from their family, from their community, from their friends, their loved ones, and yes, in some cases, even from their spouse or their children. That's not the solution for everyone, but for some people, it has to be the solution. Now, I would like to go over, but that's not the case for everybody. And I would like to encourage us all to explore, bring this up, and just contemplate it. Sit with it for a minute. That the choice to go no contact with your family members should be a choice for now. And to say whatever you have to tell that person, because sometimes this no contact conversations become talks speaking about the future with permanence and saying, from now on, you are not my father, you are not my mother. From now on, you are not my sibling. From now on, this is not my family. From now on, forever. Okay, you have to let that communication be what it is. And I don't know your situation. And if that's the situation, fine. If it's not, to respect ourselves as individuals and be fair to ourselves, and to respect our loved ones or former loved ones as individuals, and to be fair to them. And I believe in fairness to an extent, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. To be fair and to respect individuality and these needs for community, these needs for support, at least within ourselves, let us all consider. We shouldn't choose one day to go no contact for every day. Family is chosen, and every day. Today, you don't have to make an active choice to let somebody back into your life or to excise somebody from your life. But today you are in a relationship with who you are in a relationship with. And if you want to make a healthy choice, choose it and say, do I choose this today? Do I choose this for now? And do I allow myself? Let me allow myself in the future to choose what I will need in the future, because I don't know if these triggers will go away. I don't know if these triggers that cause me to revert back to that hurt inner child, I don't know if those will heal until I have tried whatever I haven't tried. And it may be that you must choose every day, no contact today, no contact today. And is that something you will have to choose again and again for the rest of your life? Yes, it may very well be. Or it may be that you can say, I choose to go no contact. I don't want to pressure myself to do it every day. But this year, 2026, let's say, 2026 is my year where I'm staying no contact, and I'm not going to pressure myself. I'm not going to rush myself or push myself into finding something else. But also, let us have an experience of openness to say, if somebody reaches out to me and says the right thing, and I believe it, I must, again, at least communicate the boundary, and maybe include in that boundary, I would suggest to you, a condition. And yes, love can be very conditional, and a love can be conditional and still be healthy. I believe it. And be fair. But a conditional love that says, I can come back to loving you and accepting you in a role in my life. But I need you to respect that right now, I need this space. I need this boundary because I'm still healing from something. So the first thing I would say is family is chosen, and every day. And I am especially concerned, before we move on, I want to say I'm especially concerned about women in the paradigm that we are living in right now. Because there are a lot of women who have made the choice to pursue a career because they need to in order to survive. And there are a lot of women who have made the choice to have no children, frankly, because they don't want to. And this paradigm that we are in now is putting a lot of pressure on women to make a choice younger than is comfortable for them, to choose to prioritize getting married and having a family, to the point where right now we have a crisis in this country of defunding of our shelters for victims of domestic violence. And specifically, the financing of these shelters for victims of domestic violence, where they are being told that there is a new standard that will require them, and intimate partner violence particularly, that requires them to acknowledge and to teach women to acknowledge that the best circumstance to raise a child in is in a two-parent household. And that there are advantages, statistical advantages, to being raised in a two-parent household and to traditional family values. I'm not here to challenge those. I'm just here to say, in that paradigm, as resources go getting diminished for women, you can't be surprised that these women are all being triggered. Even the ones who may have socially conservative values are going to be triggered by being told, you need to acknowledge, you need to teach other women, or you need to teach your children that your ideal circumstance would be to go back to their father or go back to the abusive man or abusive partner in your life. When that is a value, first of all, when any religious value is enforced by the government, it is hurting everybody. This is why Thomas Jefferson taught that perhaps the most pervasive and dangerous thing that the government does is to intrude over that separation between church and state. And I believe it, and that's the most political thing I hope to say this in this sermon. But I believe it on a moral level. I believe in it and a moral value. Secularism is a value of the Church of Korihor for this reason. When the government has to enforce a standard, whether that is you have to be straight in order to be married, or you have to be, you have to support the ideas of the nuclear family in order to receive support, financial or otherwise, in order to survive. It is a sign of the weakness of those ideas, because if they were so convincing and so powerful, so effusive, nobody would have to make a law forcing anybody to believe it. I just closed my notes. Sorry. Here we go. I got it. We choose our families, and we choose them every day. And women don't need to choose to have children in order to choose to have somebody in their life who is part of their family. Men don't have to choose it. Nobody has to choose to make people in order to choose to have a family. Your chosen family is made up of the people you choose to incorporate in your family. Next, we must validate each other's pain. As I said before, it's easy to throw around words like narcissist and codependent, wicked daughter-in-law, or mother-in-law from hell. But while these accusations may be true or not true in each individual case, everyone that we are talking about are people. Abusive people are people, and abused people are people. And sometimes we convince ourselves that because we are the latter, that means that we cannot be the former. And if experience shows us anything, it's that is not true. Especially because when we allow ourselves to compartmentalize and put ourselves in this box that says, I was the one abused, that means I'm not abusive. It blinds us to the little decisions that we forget in just everyday behaviors, that to the people in our lives, they remember. And even if you didn't intend to hurt somebody, that doesn't mean that person doesn't get hurt. That is why, this is my third point, we can take responsibility for the effect of our actions, not just the actions themselves. Remember I said earlier about fairness. I'm high on the value of fairness, that we look to what we do, what choices we make in life, with how they affect other people, because we experience pain. And we want other people to treat us fairly. And that's not a system that works unless we are willing to participate in being fair. In that case, and this is going to be painful for some, so I'm just take a moment with it. Take it if it helps you. And if it doesn't help you right now, put it on the back burner. If it doesn't help you at all, throw it away. Fine. Whatever. I don't give you your commandments to live by. I don't believe in commandments. I would suggest this to you. It's easy to see the flaws in others, and it's harder to see the hurt in others. It's harder still to see the hurt that we caused others, especially our family members, and that whether or not we remember it or whether or not we meant to hurt them, being responsible for a life worth living means choosing to hear and to care about the effect of our choices in the lives of others. And that can include people we go no contact with, now or in the future. And so we must consider that to be responsible may include saying, I don't have to be responsible for I'm not responsible for anyone else's feelings. And it's certainly true that you must protect yourself emotionally within yourself and take a balanced approach at saying, if I didn't mean to hurt anybody, then I just can't blame myself entirely for the hurt that person perceived. Okay. So that's the unfairness level. Okay. It could be that your meaning to hurt somebody was down here and the hurt you actually caused inadvertently is here. And to take a leap of emotional investment to be responsible from here to here and say, I will meet you where you are, hear you out, and take responsible for the pain I caused in you. That right there is where that fairness meter is likely going to feel off. For anybody to make a change in their lives, especially when you didn't realize how you were hurting other people, it's going to require you to decide, this may be unfair to me. I'm choosing to do it and be responsible for it, even though it is unfair to me. What is the fuel of that decision? What is the fuel to cause us to decide, I'm going to do better. I'm going to take responsibility for this. I would put to you that fairness, that choice, the fuel to make that choice, to make a change, is love. And you can live your life without joy and happiness. It's possible. People do it all the time. It's a lot harder to live without love. For yourself, for other people, for life. I spent many years of my life saying, I think people who say that they're in love with life and being in love with life must be crazy, because I was so not in love with life. But even if you're not in love with other people, even if you're not in love with yourself, even if you're not in love with life, you have to have love with something. You have to be in love with something. Something has to drive you every day. And if we are to decide, I'm willing and open to at least investigating the possibility of relinquishing this no contact boundary. A necessary part of that is going to be the choice to say, I will be responsible for the hurt I caused this person and live with it, even live with the guilt, even if it is unfair. Even if it means, hey, you didn't accept me. This started out because you didn't accept me the way I am. Do you remember that? This all happened because you didn't care about me and my situation. You know, I'm not saying you don't voice those things, and I'm not saying you don't make that part of your conditions. I'm just saying in that process, if that divide is going to get bridged, and it doesn't have to be, I can't stress this enough. For some people, the moral choice to protect yourself and the people you love may be to say, I'm not open to this, to relinquishing the no contact right now. And I may never be. You have to accept that as possible for you. But if you are going to open yourself back up to say, it's possible, there's a road back. There's a road back to this relationship. It's going to mean you're going to have to hear some uncomfortable things that are going to cause you to live in that anxiety. And you're going to need tools, whether that is an archetype in your mind, in your focus, in your consciousness that says, the father in me protects me, or the mother in me protects me. This internal family systems is something that a lot of people use. As I understand it, having not done IFS or EMDR, that's a pretty directly correlated science to how EMDR works. Whatever it is, it could be mindfulness, it could be meditation, it could be, or CBT/DBT. Whatever it is, before you can begin to reestablish that relationship if that's a priority. You're going to have the tools to be able to live in the shameful feelings, the guilty feelings, the hurt feelings that are going to come out of somebody else saying, when you left the church, you did this hurt to me. Or when you said these things about Christ, you hurt me. Or when you chose to live differently because you are fill in the blank. That hurt me. You're going to have to be able to feel that hurt, acknowledge that hurt as that person's hurt, without that guilt being, or shame being associated with, oh shit, I made the wrong choice by leaving the church, by choosing to live authentically, by choosing to be myself, by choosing to invest in myself, by choosing to protect my children or my family. Those things are still valid. Those things are still good. And if you can't divorce that in your head and tell yourself, my feeling responsible for the hurt I caused that person is not my feeling, allowing them and the church, or them and God's, or them and scripture. It's not letting these dead languages and these dead words control me and tell me I was wrong in doing and making the choices that I feel right about. And that's not easy to do. And like I said, if you can't do that, it may be that this no contact thing, even though you choose it every day, chosen family is chosen every day, it may very well be that no contact is a permanent situation. And for many people I know, it is. And I would never tell any of them, and I won't tell any of you, no, that's wrong. You have to let the people back into your life. You absolutely do not. You do not. You owe, let me say, family is a privilege, not a right. I mean, that's just the blunt reality of it. It would be lovely if we were all, if there were an obligation we were all owed to be loved unconditionally in all circumstances. At least one person out there is responsible for you. But who would that even be? It can't be your mother, though that's a person who probably did more to bring you into this world than anybody really. But a lot of us know the narcissistic mother. A lot of us know the abusive mother in our lives or somebody else's lives. We've seen the effect of mother choosing to enmesh. This is a psychological term, as I understand it, which is to enmesh, to engage in parental enmeshment, which is where the parent decides that the child is a reflection of them, is an extension of them. And there's no situation where parental enmeshment is healthy. But there are a lot of moments, I would say, in the development of all of us as children, where a parent, especially mothers, but not just mothers, become enmeshed in us, and it goes unnoticed. Certainly goes unnoticed to us. I'm not a psychologist. I barely know what enmeshment is as an adult. I certainly wasn't born knowing what it was, right? And maybe your intuition can instruct you on this, help you with it, but ultimately, it should be the responsibility of us as parents to acknowledge and see where enmeshment happens, parental enmeshment, where we start to see children as not being individuals that we brought into the world because we wanted to bring an individual into the world, but as being mere extensions of ourselves, representatives of our legacy, or what have you. There's no case where that becomes part of the condition of loving somebody, where it doesn't grow toxic and dysfunctional. But there are years of our early childhood where it goes overlooked. It looks like being proud. It looks like being supportive. But when we start to look at our children and say, well, that, to say, if you are my child, you're going to live like this, you're going to espouse these values, and you're going to promote them, and you're going to be a part of this. There's never a situation where that doesn't turn unhealthy. And last, I would say, but on that point, I would say, but again, that's not healthy to create that openness, to take responsibility for your effect on somebody else, invite them back into your life, and where they can say, do I get to tell you off now? Do I get to say to you how you hurt me? There's never a condition of that where you should engage in it, where we should engage in it if we're being true to who we are and living a life worth living, except that you are allowed in yourself a defense that says, okay, I can feel guilty, or I can feel bad, or I can feel responsible for the hurt I caused you, and not internalize that as shame for my choosing me, for my choosing to be authentic and true to myself and live the life that's worth living for me. And if you loved me, and another thing I find very helpful in this, in my relationships in life, is to say, if you loved me, you wouldn't want me to live in a circumstance where I didn't want to live. You would want me to live because I want to live. And if you can't be a part of that, this relationship is dysfunctional and there's no healing it. And trying is hurting me, and it's hurting you. It's certainly not helping your development. So that is where I would say I'm bringing to my last point here. It takes two to tango when it comes to resolving no contact. And so in order to make that happen, there have to be clear stakes laid out. So, fourth point, communicate boundaries as an emotional investment in family. We are family. All family is chosen family. If we are family, we have boundaries. There are things you don't say. There are even if they're true, or even if they feel true, even if it's a part of being yourself. And these are my boundaries. And where only one person sets boundaries, that relationship is going to go dysfunctional again. And you may have to go no contact again. And sure, as the day is long, I assure you, if you have to go no contact a second time with a person, it is going to hurt so much more. So I would say in that situation, it's going to take some courage. It's going to take courage not only to say, I'm willing to be hurt again, I'm willing to be hurt more deeply again, I'm willing to deal with the feelings possibly of guilt that I took you back into my life and it exposed people I love to the harm of this dysfunctional relationship. Not only that, but I choose to believe that this family relationship that you and I have is a bond that enriches your life and my life and the lives of other loved ones in our circle. If that value isn't there, I don't think it can be healthy to relinquish or to resolve or heal a no contact relationship, a no contact status. In that situation, I do fundamentally believe, and this is my belief, this is my personal belief, and one that I am trying to convince you of right now, but because I have seen how the opposite of this belief has hurt so many people I love, and people in our congregation, people in my personal life, and how I see it out there looking into the wider culture of our society. If people feel obligated to love, if it's something that we feel required to do, abuse will follow. And a life made up of systematic abuse is not worth living. If we choose to live a life worth living, if we choose to make the lives of others worth living, we must make the choice to invest in chosen family every day. And I would appeal this to you in closing. It is not only possible to take people from your family of origin and reinvest emotionally in them and repair a no contact status with that person so that you enrich their life and they enrich yours. It's not only possible, though I had at one point doubted. In fact, at one point I straight up disbelieved. It is possible, it is healthy and productive to create a relationship where you set boundaries, they set boundaries, and believe that that person, if they loved you, would want you to set boundaries, would want you to say, I understand that this hurt you, that my choice hurt you. I want you to know that it hurts me every time you bring it up. I'm willing to hear it up to this point, but I can't hear it every day. It hurts too much. Can you do me a favor and just don't bring it up every day? Don't bring it up all the time. In fact, can we just have this out? It may be, can we have this out one time? I'll hear you because I'm ready. I'm in an emotional place to do it. I'll hear you out and then tell you how I will accept that responsibility for that hurt I caused. And then let's not bring it up again because it's just too painful. And if somebody can't meet you halfway on that, that is a good moment to have that inner conviction, that inner light that sparks within you and says, well, I'm here pursuing the life worth living, and you're not part of it. And it will hurt. And so that's why I say, I've been watching a lot of TikTok lately since I started making more TikTok content. And I have to laugh because I start following, their lives on TikTok where estranged parents get together and just go into an absolute bitch fest about my child left the church and now they left me, or my child can't handle my politics and so they went no contact with me and they just don't care about me. And all of this is because of therapy. And then they go off on therapy these days. If it undermines the family, then it has no value, they say. And I just have to laugh because you hear it. If you sit and wait and listen to it long enough, and I'm not suggesting everybody do it. This is my toxic thing. I do. But you will hear so many toxic, judgmental things, hurtful things these people expose about their loved ones to the general public. My child did this or that. My child thinks this or that and doesn't care about me. And it's because they went to therapy. And now that they're in therapy and working on themselves, quote unquote, now that means that I have to be out of their life. What therapist would tell you that you have the right to cut off your own father. I got news for you. Every one of them. Every single therapist worth their salt is going to tell you you have absolutely the right to cut off mother or father. Even Jesus taught that he who would choose father or mother over me is not worthy of me. Any therapist would tell you, any therapist worth their salt. And if they tell you otherwise, I would suggest you reevaluate and look at a different therapist if this is the case. Any therapist worth their salt is going to tell you, you don't owe anybody a family relationship. That's not something that you owe by obligation. You have to choose it, and it has to be functional. If it grows dysfunctional, there's no way you're not hurting that person, and there's no way they're not hurting you. And so when these parents these estranged parents, quote unquote, go off about how therapy convinced my child that they're better off without me, I can't help but laugh and say, I'm sorry, but that's probably true. I don't know you, don't know your situation. And sure, there are situations where therapists who are human beings will make mistakes or act unethically, but the purpose of therapy is not supposed to be to educate people on what their values are. The purpose of therapy, as I understand it, and if it's good therapy, and I take this not from my own intuition or my own thoughts in my own head, I'm taking this from Dr. Rollo May, perhaps one of the wisest people I, as an atheist, have ever read. I, as a person, have ever read. Dr. Rollo May used to say, and particularly in his book, Man's Search for Himself, he said, the purpose of therapy was and is supposed to be to make the unseen seen. So if your therapist is more interested in educating you on what you're supposed to do and more interested in educating you on what you're supposed to think, you are well within your rights to say, this is not a therapist for me. One, two, then maybe this is not a good therapist. But from my understanding is that the education system for therapy, for psychotherapy and psychology, is supposed to enforce standards. And the regulation of therapy is supposed to enforce standards of instructing people from the get-go when they start studying to become a therapist that you are not here to preach to that person. You are not even here to teach that person. You are here to help that side of them that is dysfunctional and needs help to emerge, and to help point that out to them from an objective standpoint. That is why therapists famously are more interested in asking questions than answering questions. Though I personally have found, if you ask a therapist, could you please not just therapize me right now? Could you actually tell me what you think? Then a lot of times they will. And or they'll tell you, but it's always a risk because they're not supposed to tell you what they think. They're supposed to tell you, point out to you what you think, what you feel, and ask you if what you're feeling, and then guide you through a series of different therapeutic applications that could help you. And that might include medication, sure. It might include devices. It might include meditation. It might include a variety of things. And for most therapists I have run into and talked to on this subject, a lot of them are going to tell you, and there are limits to what therapy can do. And you may need a spiritual practice in your life. And it doesn't have to be church. And they're right, it doesn't. It doesn't have to be God. That absolutely it doesn't have to. And it doesn't have to be any major discipline that tells you you don't do this, you don't do that, that tells you these are your new commandments, these are your new gods, these are your new prophets. It doesn't have to be any of that. But if you don't feel motivated to change, then change isn't going to happen, because change doesn't happen by just doing the work. There has to be a reason to do the work. And that's where I feel like I have a responsibility to serve among the godless community, because we don't have enough opportunities as atheists and agnostics to say there are reasons to choose a better life, and there are reasons to be more fair to other people, and there are reasons why your life is worth living, and nihilism shouldn't knock you down. Nihilism is not something to overcome. Nihilism is not something to defeat, I would put to you. And there are people who disagree with me on this. Fine. I'm trying to convince you from my personal standpoint. Nihilism is just true in that when we rely on objectivity of meaning, when we say to ourselves, there has to be something in this cosmos that is the purpose for why I am here, why this is here, there's no situation where we accept that meaning comes from out there in the stuff of this universe. It has to exist in some priority of some mind out there that only could be described in that context as the mind of God. There's no paradigm where that exists, where that happens. And you externalize all your meaning to that immaterial, unprovable, obviously manufactured mind, where there isn't somebody out there who benefits from convincing you of a lie. And it makes total sense to me to say, for somebody who was brought up in those lies, to say, if you don't believe the lie, my child, my sibling, my brother, my sister, my spouse, if you don't believe the lie of my objective meaning, that hurts my feelings, I'm going to punish you. Even if they don't actively say that, actively choose that in their subconscious mind, they're going to choose to punish you for it. And at that point, that relationship will turn toxic and dysfunctional, and there will be either abuse continuing on and on and on and on with a person who's convinced in their mind that they didn't mean to hurt anybody, that they didn't mean to cause anybody any pain, convinced in their mind that they're totally innocent and hurting you again and again and again and again and again. And whenever you say, and whenever you even insinuate, do you get that this hurts me? Do you understand that you're hurting me? They're going to roll their eyes. Of course they are. They're used to it by then. And they say, I look back, it's another thing that I see with these toxic groups on TikTok, on YouTube, even on Facebook. Well, no, I guess not even on Facebook, especially on Facebook. These toxic estranged parents, quote unquote, bitching and moaning about how they are, about how did you abuse your kid? Did you have an abusive relationship with them? No, of course not. You say, and they say, well, there you have it. We have it right from them. They didn't abuse anybody. Goes back to the same problem. The enmeshment is harder to see when you've been doing it and getting away with it and even being celebrated for it. We see it, for example, with this, toxic, with this wicked daughter-in-law, mother-in-law from hell trope, for example. This is just an example. Where we see, as it's very common in a lot of relationships, to see with mothers and sons particularly, not exclusively, to see what's known as emotional incest, where mother hates daughter-in-law, daughter-in-law hates mother-in-law, when the pain that exists there is that son/husband chose the wife, chose who his wife is, did not choose who his mother is. But because the mother at some point in their in his development in his life was not getting the emotional or intimate support and relationship that she felt she needed. And instead of dealing with that in a healthy way, she looped it back around, that emotional intimacy, even if it has nothing to do with physical intimacy, looped it back around into a toxic relationship where her son became her surrogate husband. And so all of a sudden, any woman who comes into that boy's life becomes competition to her. And the thing about it is, when that man grows up and is an adult and gets married, it becomes easy to see. Then it becomes easy to see, oh my gosh, lady, that's not your husband, that's your son. You don't get to treat him and talk about him as if he's cheating on you with his wife. She's his wife. It's easy to see when they're adults, to see when the son is an adult. It's a lot harder to see when he's a teenager and it looks like proud mom being proud of her boy, telling everybody, my boy this, my boy that, and it sounds lovely. Oh, listen, she's so proud. If it's harder to see those triggers in other people, let alone in yourself. And so then you have this relationship where this mother-son relationship has been growing toxic for 10, 15, 20, 30 years or more. And neither mother or son necessarily know how to heal that it exists, much less how to say, hey, we're going to put a boundary here. I don't want you to talk to me about that. I don't want to hear that. I don't want you telling other people that. That's not the relationship we have. And if you don't, and if you want to continue to have this relationship, if we are going to continue to spend holidays together, you're not going to do and say these things. And then it looks like, wait, you're my husband, especially with the daughter-in-law, right? Especially with the wife, who says, look, if you and I are going to continue to have this relationship, you're going to tell your mother she can't talk to me that way. And she can't talk about me that way. And then when he doesn't do it, she gets offended. Of course she does. Of course she does. Here she is in a relationship with a person, and there's this woman who has no business feeling offended and feeling like he's cheating on her, acting as if he's cheating on her by being with his wife, the person he chose to be married to. And so we see this again and again. We see the same thing happening with surrogate fathers. This man was a father to me. You'll see it happen. Men, women, persons non-binary. Say, this man, you got to understand, my father wasn't around a lot, or my dad was abusive, or my dad didn't get me, didn't understand me. So in this community, that person was a father to me. They were chosen family to me. He was my male role model. And these attachments happen all the time. And they are often healthy relationships. And then you find out that sometimes you'll find that that's a completely healthy relationship and everything's wonderful. And what a great thing to have positive male role models in our lives. We all need them. But then how often it becomes important in this detoxifying our relationship to high demand religions like Mormonism, like evangelical Christianity, like the Jehovah's Witnesses, like Scientology. Scientology is falling apart right now. I don't know how many of you have been watching it. I think it's only really starting to surface right now, but we're starting to see it, where a lot of ex-Scientologists are finally ready to come out and say, to flee en masse. And the change that we've been seeing in Mormonism, the change we've been seeing in the Jehovah's Witnesses, the change we've been seeing in Seventh-day Adventists, it's hitting the Scientologists hard, and it's just going to keep accelerating. It's just going to keep rolling. I think if current trends are any indication, this is going to keep rolling. It's going to keep becoming a thing, and we in the Church of Korihor are going to have to support more and more people, and we should. I feel an obligation to do it. Yes, maybe. I feel a need for it in my life. I feel excited to be a part of it, deconstructing. But in this paradigm of deconstructing, we are going to likely have to deconstruct male role models that people had considered positive male role models in their life. And let it not escape that in Mormonism, a bishop is called the father of the ward. So why should it be a surprise when people say this man was like a father to me? And then he started grilling me about whether or not I masturbate, started grilling me about whether or not I look at smut on the internet. This man was like a father to me, and he's asking me these questions. And it got abusive. It got hurtful. To say nothing of the Catholic Church, where the very title of the priest that you confess to is father. Go up and down the line. And then you look to the political paradigm. Again, I don't tell people what to vote for, who to vote for, what not to vote against. I don't represent anybody's political interests. But have you noticed that people start to refer to, even inside their own group, start to refer to men in their political paradigm as daddy or as father? Do I need to mention the name of a person who said in recent years that he wished that this country, that America, would look on him as their father, with no self-awareness of how that has worked out in the world in times gone by? Political leaders are not your father because they are your political leaders. And the moment they try to convince you that they are, that is the moment where you need to be deeply concerned that this person cannot rule unless they can convince you to accept a relationship with them where you are expected on some level to just overlook all their flaws, whatever they may be. And when that same person comes out and says, I'm just using a specific example, I didn't even say anybody's name, and says, I could go out on Fifth Avenue and shoot a man and they wouldn't care. And how many people laugh, say he doesn't mean that, or whatever, and inside themselves don't even dare to ask, is that true? Until it's too late. Until you've invested a decade of your life into saying, my support for this person is part of my identity. And so now you wind up with this relationship that has to be deconstructed. This is why all the cult channels you see now, all these channels talking about detoxifying and deprogramming from the cult, are all talking about deprogramming MAGA now. Not because of how you should vote, shouldn't vote. Vote how it fits with your conscience. I don't care. It's about when you start taking on a political leader as your father figure, as your role model, or as your excuse for the toxic masculine behaviors in yourself, whoever that is. It could be the case with Bill Clinton. It could be the case with Noam Chomsky. I talked about this just the day before yesterday. Now, those Epstein files came out, and with pictures of Noam Chomsky, a man I have had deep admiration and respect for in my life. And I saw those pictures and I said, well, that's it. I had to deprogram a little bit. I had to stop and look at that and say, I can't. I expected Bill Clinton. I did not expect Noam Chomsky. Everybody expects Donald Trump. And yet, there were people who stood up in defense of it and said, well, we don't know what we don't know. They haven't proven it. And it becomes this toxic game we see again and again with, oh, they can't prove that so-and-so went to that rally with a firearm meaning to hurt anybody. You can't see, and that's not just one person whose name may rhyme with Schmeil. Here in Utah, we have a situation of a man who showed up armed to a protest. And when a man who was supposed to be armed, who was armed security for the protest, in spite of the fact that the protesters, the organizers of the protest, had said, we don't want any of the security guards, these people protecting us, we don't want any of them armed. And they broke from the national organization that told them, I think probably wisely, don't be bringing these armed people in an environment where lots of the bystanders or lots of the participants are going to be carrying arms. And then tell them your responsibility is to protect everybody at any cost, to protect anybody from being harmed. And that's why you're armed. Somebody is going to get shot. And lo and behold, the person who wound up getting shot, beyond this person, there was also an innocent bystander, a designer who was, as far as I know, supportive of what the protesters were marching for. It was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And now here in Utah, we're having to have this discussion about what's to happen with the man who shot him. Was he just doing his duty? Was he just doing his job? Was he doing what he had been sent there to do when he wound up shooting a person for carrying, which is not against the law, and hitting somebody else in the process who was just an innocent bystander? And now that man is dead. Is he guilty of manslaughter? Is he guilty of murder? Is he not doing what he was told to do? Who's responsible? All of these things come out of the moments that we look around and say, the organization, the leader, the person, persons, the committee who represent my values instructed me on what I was to do, how I was to think, and how I was to behave. And if somebody got hurt in the process, why don't I get to turn around and say, but they said, because you are a person who has the responsibility for your own actions. But what do we do in a situation where cults start to dominate our lives and start to tell us this is what you may feel is true and what you may feel is your value. But if you had values, the organization would have given them to you. And now I have successfully ranted for 2 hours about this. And it was a difficult conversation. I'm sorry if it hurt anybody's feelings. I would again just encourage you, if you would with me, just take a moment. Just consider. This life is hard. You were born on a planet. Star stuff. Every cell and every atom in your body was born of the stars. And while to the universe that means nothing, because the universe is not a mind, in that star stuff is a mind. And that mind, I put to you, you cannot read in a tarot card. You cannot hear in a prayer. You cannot communicate with in a vision, though those things may be interesting and useful tools to touching that mind. And the entirety of the universe as that mind understands and perceives it, being a part of the universe, looking out at itself and observing itself. That mind is your mind. That being is you. And though that might mean nothing to a stone, and that might mean nothing to a lizard, and that might mean nothing to your parents, it may mean nothing to the state. It has to mean something to you. Or that part of the universe, feeling like there is meaning to it, will go away. And life will feel like it's not worth living. And we here at the Church of Korihor are making lives worth living. The first life you change is yours. So again, I encourage you, just stop and take a moment. And with all the triggers around you, without having to go out and make more or bring more back into your life by contacting somebody you went no contact with, without going out there and bringing that crap back into your life, before you can do that, if you have to learn to be aware of the triggers around you right here and now. Things that would make you normally say, I have to go eat something. I have to go drink something. I have to go smoke something just to deal with this. And that may be true. And those are ways that we cope with triggers. But one way of coping with it may be just taking a moment, sit with it, and recognize where the need within us is coming up. Some things you can do very little about, like physical pain in your body. In that situation, well, I don't know what to tell you. You gotta be able to handle it with what tools you have. I wish there were more. I hope there will be more. But some of it is just this emotional pain that medication won't go very far to treat. Some of this is this spiritual need in you that can only be addressed in a spiritual realm. And that is one place where we as agnostics or atheists or godless people have been neglected, because we have been sold on this idea that the word spiritual refers to something supernatural. And it doesn't. There are no supernatural things, I put to you. There are no supernatural gods. There are no angels. There are no fairies or gnomes. That would have been cool if it were true. And I'm not saying you have to believe any of those things just because I said it. But even if you believe in those things or interact with those things or with God, it is a conversation you are having with a noble mind that was made of star stuff. And I would encourage you to observe that more often, to take it in now. And let this noble mind, which includes neurons in your viscera, or your gut, your body, includes the nerves of your whole body, not just in your head. Includes feelings. When people tell you, this is a hard one, there are people in this world who wear shirts and hats that say, fuck your feelings. Okay. You feel that? You hear that? Do you feel a physical response? Do you feel an emotional response? What context does it have? What does it make you feel? Don't just describe it in simple emotions. Describe it maybe in verbs. I want to. I need to, when I hear somebody say that. Because feelings and thoughts are not so different. Feelings, thoughts, and ideas are not so different. And when somebody tries to tell you to invalidate your feelings, that person is afraid of something, of you finding something There's no other reason to do it. So it makes sense that some organizations, some leaders, some people will tell you, fuck your feelings. Ouch. And we atheists have often been a part of that. I will cop to have been a part of that. Though I've never been a part of any political movement that espoused that ever, nor would I. Just my personal moral feelings. Your feelings are valid, and they are temporary. And they come up, and the moment, I want you to think about this, the science of this for a moment. Okay, there was a study done a few years ago. I've mentioned this before. I'm bringing it up again because it's so useful to remind yourself. They found that a feeling generally lasts a matter of a few seconds, even as little, generally, as somewhere around 6 seconds. So you got to contemplate that. If somebody says something or does something that triggers a feeling in you, and you are feeling it an hour later, I'm still pissed about that, or I'm still sad about that, I can't get that out of my mind, and it's an hour later, or 2 hours later, or a day later, or longer, that is not one feeling. That is a feeling that came up. And because it was deep, because it was profound, because it hurt, or because it was upsetting, you reinvested in it for another loop. And your brain reinvested in it for another loop. And your brain reinvested in it for another loop. And oftentimes that loop is only the result of our pushing back against it because it hurts so much, or because it is so inconvenient, or because it drives us to a behavior that can become dysfunctional and toxic because we don't know how to cope with these feelings. We don't have tools to cope with these feelings except to go back to carbohydrates, back to booze, back to drugs, back to toxic relationships, because we don't have any other tools to just sit in it and just say, I don't have to say anything. I don't have to do anything for this feeling to come up and be totally legit, and just let it go. Not just let it go. Let me rephrase and say, time marches on. You are swimming right now in space-time on a planet that's moving thousands of miles an hour around our star. A humdrum, ordinary star, like so many others in this neighborhood of our galaxy or any galaxy. And we're moving around in this, and you don't have to do a damn thing about it to make it happen. It's just going. This engine just runs. And you go forward in time because this engine just runs. And because this engine is running and the days and the hours go by, those feelings that come up in that space, those triggers that bring up these feelings of that hurts my feelings, it makes me sad, that aggravates my feelings, it makes me angry, and put more specific verbs to it. It makes me want to punch, that makes me want to cry, that makes me want to huddle up, that makes me want to soothe, that makes me want to tap, that makes me want to hit. Whatever those feelings are, whatever those verbs are, they come up in time. And every moment is an opportunity to branch them out and say, I acknowledge you. You're valid. You're fine. You, the feeling, you came up, and that was a necessary part of me, and I appreciate it. That's a necessary part of my experience. I appreciate it. I'm going this way. You go that way. You going that way? Fine. I'm going this way. And just let it go. That's how we let it go. But that oftentimes that language isn't helpful because you think it's like holding it in your fist, and it's not. And if we let it, maybe there should be more words, better words for it. But this paradigm of just let it go, this idea of just let it go, might be that you think to yourself, well, it's atrophied in there. It's so deep. The pain is so deep. It goes back so far that then to say, well, just let it go, feels invalidating of the pain that it's couched in, that brought it up. And for a lot of those triggers, the abuse is explicit that it came from. And you may not even be something you remember. And it may not even be something that you felt bad about, but that your body remembers. This nervous system, this beautiful nervous system you have, gorgeous star stuff that you are, remembers the pain and holds on to it and keeps trying to communicate with you, keeps trying to say to you, I'm hurting here, man. You let this happen to me. And sometimes we get this idea, well, if it didn't hurt anybody else, if it just hurt me, that's okay. Well, it's not okay. Because if those triggers keep coming up, coping with them either looks like diverging from them, welcoming them, letting them happen, living in them, and then moving on and acknowledging, going, whoo, there it was. There it was. There it is. Or it means every opportunity to branch out, you loop back and feel it again and feel it again and feel it again. And it's called ruminating. That's what I understand. It's a very scientific term. But it's also, it can become a moral choice. I choose, and try this on. I choose to move forward in time, and I'm not taking this feeling with me. I'm just not picking it up. Or try this if that doesn't work. I'm moving forward in time. If this feeling and this pain goes forward with me, that's okay. But I'm not reinvesting any energy into it right now. I have other priorities. I have other things to do with my life. If that doesn't work, try this. These are all things, if you couldn't tell, that I do. Sorry. This is usually a part-time. Core horrors know this is usually a part-time when I cry a little bit. For me, what that looks like sometimes is I'm living in it now. You couldn't tell. I'm living right in it now. I choose to be my father's son. I have a very Mormon dad. That I love very much. For all my shortcomings and flaws as a father and as a husband and as a man. Most of the ones that I am proud of are his. I know his toxicity. I know his pain. I learn more about it as much as I can. And I know that he is him and I am me. But when I try to imagine loving myself, which is a hard thing for me to do and a big part of my spiritual development, I try to live as Glenn Rollins' son. not just to make him proud, because that's hard to do, because I'm sure that the proudest that I could make him is if I were still Mormon. But when I look at my relationship with him and how my life goes forward, I look at myself and say, is this a man who took the best of Glenn Rollins and added it to his story? And when I appreciate myself and experience what I think of as being like loving myself, I remember that I'm Glenn Rollins and that I live up to it. There are some things that I will never live up to because his standards are some standards. And then the standards that spoke to me as a boy, that speak to me still as a man, are all the things that caused me to choose one day that I wasn't going to go back to church. To choose for a time that I wasn't going to speak to my mother. To choose that if I was going to marry this woman and have children with her, it was unfair to cut my mother out of my life just because I couldn't handle being triggered by her behavior. And that I was going to open myself back up and let her back into my life, and not just allow her to be present, but also allow myself to love her again and to forgive and to let her be herself and not ask her to change, but to set boundaries for me, for my wife at the time, for my children. And that as I invested in those boundaries, and as she let me know her boundaries, and I respected those boundaries, we would reinvest in this relationship, and we would renew, and we would be family. And that it's not permanent. That we would reinvest every day. And when the day came that we said, no, you crossed the boundary, and that starts to deteriorate and we can't resolve it, well, then it's over. It goes back. And it was that same environment where I had a sibling who crossed a boundary one too many times with me, and I have not spoken to them since. And I often have to ask myself, would I let this sibling back? Same thing. If you've ever had a relationship with lovers you've left in the past, you've had to make this choice there too. Can we even be friends? Can we even be a part of each other's life? And it's totally acceptable for the answer to that to be no. No, we can't be a part of each other's lives. This got too toxic. This got too dysfunctional. I just tear you down, you tear me down. But it's a lot easier, I would suggest, with a lover or with an intimate partner, though that is hard, than it is with your child, with your parents, your grandparents, your family legacy. How easy it is, especially for those of us who grew up Mormon, for somebody to throw in your teeth that you are the child of Mormon pioneers. You carry their legacy. How easy that is. And to allow that generational trauma to hurt you again. I can't imagine what it must be like for Black Christians who I hear talking about growing up in a household where to be Baptist was synonymous with being Black, where being toxic masculine in your behaviors was synonymous with being a man at all. Or how many women I hear from who feel obligated to acts of service for other people because their self-worth diminishes if they don't do as they are asked, do as they're told, and give of their time freely to whoever needs it, because they feel like they have been told all their lives that because you are a woman, you are the glue of the whole community, of the whole society, so your time doesn't belong to you. Your ambitions don't belong to you. All these pains, they live in us. And we will do better. Every time that we learn to accept that you have a brief moment in time, you only have so many breaths left in this life. Don't waste a single one of them on a relationship with a person, an organization, a political movement, a philosophy, a school, or any other relationship that tells you you owe it to us to be a part of this relationship. You're obligated whether you like it or not. Fuck that noise. No, I do not. If you can't be good, there's this old song. I'm going to close with this. We'll do a Godless hymn here, and I appreciate you guys for indulging me here a little bit. There's this old song that goes, I don't want to play in your yard. I don't like you anymore. How does it go? I obviously didn't prepare this. You can't holler. There's some part of it. You can't holler down our rain barrel. You can't climb our apple tree. I don't want to play in your yard if you can't be good to me. I wish we still sang that song to children. I wish that we all as children were instilled with this value. I know I wasn't, even though maybe somebody tried. The church didn't try because it was detrimental to the church. I'm convinced of that. For me to have learned as a child that I was responsible for myself, not just because I live in my body and in my experience, but because I'm never fully present for the people I love or for the things I'm passionate about if I'm not connected to and protective of myself. Go no contact, if that's what it takes. But do it for now and do it every day. Not today, forever. I would encourage you. Today, or for this month, or for this year. And know ahead of time. Do the best you can to know ahead of time that you can say, so that you can say, if this relationship were to repair in the future, this is what it would look like. And to anybody who will tell you that's your fill in the blank, so you have to. It's required to. That's what we do. We just forgive. We forgive. We move on. But only with people who want to move on with us. Amen. Thanks for listening to me rant. I hope that it does serve other people and that you get something really good out of it. If not, I'm an idiot and forget I said anything. Let's end with a more cheerful note. How about this? This is one of my favorites. Oh, here's one of our newer favorites. Yeah, let's have a new hymn. One of our newest, one of my favorites, The Age of Reason. I appreciate you guys for your time. I appreciate you for continuing to invest in your relationship with the Church of Korihor. And I would ask you to go to korihor.org and see some of the changes we've made there. I've made the interface a little easier to use, and I've been making some improvements, especially on the giving page, so that people can give donations to the missions. We now have an Amazon page an Amazon list where you can buy items, and also an address down St. George where you can ship donations to go to the unsheltered and to people who are housing and food insecure. I would encourage everybody to only do what is affordable for you. You can also, of course, donate directly to the mission, to the giving fund, so that we can go out there and we can continue to serve people. And I would also ask, by the way, we have a new video on the YouTube channel right now and on TikTok. And it's going live on Facebook. No, I think it's already live on Facebook, to promote the giving fund, and to make other people aware that we are out here serving the unsheltered. And I would ask you, if possible, if it fits with your values, to please share that as much as possible. I'm going to donate as much as I can, afford to pay to promote it on those channels. But that is meager. There's only so much I can do. And if you want to donate, of course, you can use that donation form to donate, and part of the proceeds for that will go to paying to promote it. But if you could just share it, it'd make a big difference. Flash bright, my friends.
After the night of faith dawns our revolution. Rebels in an age of doubt took hold of our evolution. Harness the elements, tame the gods of thunder, cast off the slave's chains, look up with wonder. Born into the age of reason, with hearts that grow and heal, we can build our tomorrow with minds that know and feel. Rise against tyrants, rise from bended knee. Adorn the age of reason, we choose to be free. We choose to be free.